the Daily Nation. And this is the headline: a drinking nation inside Kenya's big alcohol problem. If we do not act now, our whole generation will be wiped out. And this is the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, speaking. And we have some illustration on the front here. The figure in caps, let me put it that way, is 27,042,214. The population aged between 15 and 65 who consume alcohol, which is 48.6% of the total population. Legal alcohol, 12.7%, changa, 5.4%, 7% traditional liquor, 4.1% portable spirits, 19.4% at least one type of alcohol. Lifetime use of alcohol for the population aged between 15 and 65 years in percentage, and that is highlighted on the front page. Regions: Nairobi 23.7%. That is the percentage of those between 15 and 64 years of age who are reported to have lifetime use of alcohol. So Nairobi Coast leading at Western leading at 29.3%, Coast 23.9%, Nairobi 23.7%. So those are the figures on the front page. Northeastern 0.0%. And also some more detail on the front page. Love for the tipple for a country whose vast population is protesting over the high cost of living, with prices of basic food commodities going through the roof. The rate at which alcohol is consumed by millions tells a different story, one of despair and depression. And many jobless young people are fast falling into the alcohol trap, bringing pain and misery to their families. How do we untangle them from this menace? So this special report runs from pages 2, 3, 4, and 5. Also on the front page, before I flip the pages: week of protests, will Ruto Raila strike a deal? Make or break, as Azimio Chief Raila Odinga and President William Ruto stood their ground, with the former insisting the protests were within Kenya's constitutional rights, while the head of state has warned that his administration will not condone any such demos. The results of the three-day protests could, however, spell doom for the country, but there is still time to avoid or avert looming turmoil. So the more on that on page 7. Law students protest over examination failure and resit dates. Kenya School of Law students protest to the Council of Legal Education over the failure rate in the March 2023 exams and disparity in the examination and course content. All right, let's take a look at the Business Daily before we come back to the story on alcohol abuse. Lois, I know you, for one, are well placed to, comment on the issue. Business Daily: economy slides into dangerous territory. Defaults, non-performing loans hit a 16-year high of 14.9%. Stocks: the Nairobi Securities Exchange sheds 26%, or 653.7 billion shillings in 6 months. Inflation stays above the 7.5% target for 13 straight months. An image here of a person I believe is Kenyan, carrying a heavy tax burden. GDP growth slow to 5.3%. Loan rate up to 13.2% in May. Shilling has fallen 15% since the year began. Unemployment rate at 13.9%. PMI down to 47.8 points in June. Inflation flat at 7.9% in June. So that is the front page of the Business Daily. Kenya's most expensive power plants revealed. Muhoroni gas turbine supplies the costliest electricity to the national grid at 56.73 shillings for every unit, according to an official report that lifts the lid on the expensive power deals that have been passed to consumers in the form of high bills. A detailed analysis by the Business Daily of official data tabled in Parliament last week, shows that Muhoroni turbine price is more than double that of the second most expensive generator. I'm struggling to read that. Let me just confirm with my hard copy here. Second most expensive generator, which is Iber Africa Power, which sells a unit to Kenya Power for 28 shillings and 24 cents. Rabai Power comes third at 24 shillings and 0.4 a unit. On the ticker, Car dealers protest increase of import duty to 35%. How Jumia Kenya employee stole 21 million shillings. And lastly, on the ticker, IFC to guide Kenya's bank loan pricing reforms. Let's now take a look at the Taifa Leo. And on the front page of the Taifa Leo, this is the headline. Vitisho hapa kule, rais asema atasafirisha wafadhili wa maandamano, wanasiasa wa KK makanisani kulaani maandamano. Kindiki aonya Raila na wafuasi wake mtajuta. Kuria andika mtandaoni patakufa mtu. And apart or aside from Raila Odinga and William Ruto on the front page of the Taifa Leo, we also have Rigathi Gachagua, Kimani Ichung'wah, and Kithure Kindiki, the Interior Cabinet Secretary, the tough-talking government officials. We have Rigathi Gachagua quoted as saying, Raila, unapigania nini? Raia walikukataa mara tano. Kimani Ichung'wah, the majority leader in the National Assembly, quoted as saying, Jumatano tutasimama kidete kulinda nchi yetu. And Kithure Kindiki quoted as saying, hatutakubali maafa na uharibifu zaidi. Also on the front page, waasi ODM walilia Ruto aokoe. This is Jalas Jalango. You might know him as such, the Langata member of parliament. We also have on the front page an image of the education CS, Ezekiel Mashogu. The accompanying headline is Masharti ya TTC sasa yabadilika, kigezo cha wanafunzi kuwa na alama maalum katika masomo husika chaondolewa. And then mtihani wa KCPE, mtahiniwa ana fursa murwa wa kujipima umahiri wake katika somo la social studies na dini. So we have those questions on through pages 10 to 11. At the very top here, an interesting story for the politically inclined. Kenya Kwanza ya shuku Haji, viongozi wa mrengo tawala wadae ndiye huibia Azimio siri. And serikali yaambia Raila dhubutu uone mara hii, huku upinzani ukionekana kutotishika kuhusu maandamano. So that is the front page of the Taifa Leo. Let's take a look at the Standard. And headline story is this: Kenyans brace for tough protest week. Azimio has declared it will hold demonstrations from Wednesday to Friday this week as Kenyans push for a lowering of the cost of living, but the move comes at a cost. Business will be paralyzed in many parts of the country. Sharing the front page is this image of President William Ruto at the United Nations. It's time for Africa, and this is the AU meeting that took place this weekend. President William Ruto chats with Comoros President Azali Assoumani, who is also the chair of the African Union, and African Development Bank President Akiwumi Adesina on the sidelines of the AU summit in Nairobi yesterday. What else? Let us see what else is on the front page of the Standard. There's an image of a young lady here. Police, 3 friends hold clue to savage Ruai killings. At the very top here, Mudavadi puts a tight leash on parastatal bosses, professional bodies to keep off vetting of varsity courses. So that is the Standard. Let's take a look at the Star. And their headline is Uhuru linked to 40 million shilling Azimio protest budget. Ruto accuses Kenyatta and Raila of sabotaging his government using demos. And they tell us ex-president's office family denies opposition funding claims. Ruto's Agenda 2063 to deliver a prosperous Africa. An image of him again alongside, this time, Egypt President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, and on the sidelines of the 5th Media Coordination Meeting of the African Union, Regional Economic Communities, Regional Mechanisms, and the African Union member states at the UN complex in Gigiri, Nairobi County. Also on the front page, a story that is particularly close to the Nation Media Group, and Elizabeth Merab covered health agenda with a passion. Last Friday, Elizabeth Merab promised a cousin banter and laughter on the next day's visit. Her relatives were to visit her at 10 a.m. on Saturday at the Aga Khan Hospital. That was not to be. She died in sedated sleep at 4:15 a.m. on Saturday of sickle cell anemia, aged 31. She had worked for the Nation Media Group for 9 years, covering infectious diseases. Also on the front page, Shabab in new recruitment drive to boost numbers. Al-Shabaab militants are recruiting foreigners from neighboring countries as fewer Kenyans are joining. Philip Manga is quoted here as saying, Railway City, new hub of jobs. And at the very top here, drums of war as Ruto-Raila allies brace for fresh confrontation. And an image of a gentleman wearing a sufuria on his head, holding up a placard that reads, when the rich rob the poor, it is called business. When the poor fight back, it is called violence. Okay, so that is the Star. Let's take a look at the People Daily. And this is the headline. Why imported cars will cost you more. Kenyans will be forced to pay nearly 100,000 shillings more for a 1 million shilling vehicle following review of EAC levies from 25% to 35% in Kenya Kwanza move to spur local manufacturing and attract investment after entering bilateral trade deals. An image on the front page there of the African leaders who were in the country. African presidents in Nairobi for talks. And Kenya's big attraction, the wildebeest migration on in the Mara. At the top here, courts slow down state plans. An image of Justice Mugure Thande and the Bilibani Law Courts. On the front here, also at the very top, we have no apologies for working with Ruto, vow ODM rebels. More on that, but I will divert us back now to the front page of the Daily Nation and look and ask Lois to comment on this top story, and that is a drinking nation inside Kenya's big alcohol problem. Let me flip over to pages 2, 3, 4, and 5 so that we can take a look. This is page 2, a drinking nation inside Kenya's big alcohol problem. Despite hard times, many are getting into debt to sustain habit. So that is page 2. Page 3, when I flip over, it tells us on consumption of alcohol, men still ahead of women. Tharaka Nithi, Embu, Machakos, and Murang'a in that order, top counties table. This particular report by Mercy Chelangat. There is a figure that cut across both pages, and it's currently 1 in 8 Kenyans between the ages of 15 and 65. About 3.2 million people, including 2.5, I assume it's 2.5 million, consume alcohol. Let me just confirm. 2.5 million men consume alcohol. And now page 4. No, what was it? Page 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 2, 3. Let's see pages 4 and 5. Actually, yes. Gachagua takes on alcoholism in the Mount Kenya region. Mr. Gachagua and other political leaders have said alcoholism threatens central region's social fiber. Target to cut number of bars by half is yet to be achieved. And on the next page, youth abuse alcohol as coping mechanism. I have noticed more and more young people coming here to drink, especially in the mornings and on weekends. And quoted here is a unnamed bar owner. Young people using alcohol to numb suffering due to economic hardship. Lois, what do you make of that analysis? The paper linking, or rather perhaps the experts they spoke to, linking alcohol abuse to the tough economic times.
Yeah, first and foremost, I think, Oli, we've been walking this journey in the valley, going deeper and deeper in the valley for a very long time. And despite calls for, some stringent measures to be taken, this has just been thrown to the wind. And therefore, the biggest issue here is accessibility. Now, you can walk I think maybe 50 steps in most of the places and you can get alcohol, access it from the highest to the lowest quality. So any man is like, I'm just seeing 30 shillings. If someone has 30 shillings, they may not access good food, but they can access some form of alcohol. And coming to what is being reported, any stress-related issue, any stress and any stressor that someone goes through is actually a twin to consuming something from external to be able to help them manage their kind of stresses, because we have lost our ability to talk and ability to seek help and ability to be listened to. So the best friend, in fact, most people call it a friend, and you find friendship and you find the best friend is basically alcohol. But the accessibility is big for me. Yeah.
So it's some form of solace.
Basically, because where else does someone maybe with 10 shillings go if they cannot get food, but they can get alcohol? Because definitely it will numb and it will intoxicate them, and they will forget their issues for a while. Now, if they wake up or they sober up and they cannot sort it out, then they will still look for this particular stuff that made them forget. And so we have that, that kind of a spiraling effect. And then the accessibility. And of course, you see the people who are now selling this cheap alcohol are very reasonable. And they can give you credit for anything, including a cup. So all you need to do is make commitment. And people are so committed because they will give you the best option to be able to consume their stuff. And they are doing this business now without any fear, without any kind of control. And it's becoming a big challenge now. Yeah.
All right. And of course, it comes with its own, because once you get addicted, and then the health implications and also social implications of that. So that's the front page story of the Daily Nation. We cover it across 4 pages. That is pages 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so time now. I'm looking at my clock. Time for us to get into the topic of conversation. And with me in studio this morning, we have Dr. Kizi Shako. She is a forensic medical practitioner, SGBV expert. We also have sitting next to her Lois Noah, a psychologist who you just heard from right now. We have Dan Matakaya, founder Dan. Why am I struggling so much with this foundation? But it's also a GBV survivor. And we have Marvin Juguna, a psychologist, GVRC. Good to have all of you in studio. Now, I did promise on Friday, because this particular article I'm about to reference was published on The Star on Friday, penned by one Gordon Osen, and it quoted at least one of my panelists who is seated here, and that is Dr. Kizi. And it tells the story of one JMK who went out with his friend, who went out to have a good time, went to use the bathroom, dimly lit, the story tells us, dimly lit facility. 4 men accosted him, took him to a vehicle, assaulted him, and then left him in the parking lot. And notably, he says he did not report it to the police. Fact, where is this? Yeah, it just says he didn't report the attack to the police. They tell us now of another story. This gentleman, identified by the initials HS, he traveled to Nairobi from Mombasa for work. He was staying at a guest house in downtown Nairobi. On the last day, he says he went clubbing to unwind, only to wake up the next morning in his bed naked. And he discovered he had been raped. He did not, again, report the attack to the police. The reason he gave is that he has not reconciled with the fact that fellow men overpowered him and raped him. And he's quoted as saying, "How do you start telling, say, a female officer your story? I just could not." And this is not the only story which has been referenced in this particular article. There's another individual identified by the initials MK, and this is a 23-year-old man. It said, you know, he made some 2 friends in college, and this particular report uses the term groomed. So they groomed him, and at a New Year's party, the gentleman says the 2 friends forced themselves on him. And this is after they were really nice to me. They would buy me drinks, they would pay my taxi fare, and they appeared to look out for my interests. Other than that, the 4th story I came across when I was reading this was one of a security guard. Now, he is identified as Kariuki in Nyeri. He was walking home from work one dawn last December when he was accosted by 2 armed men, and is quoted as saying, "They threw me to the ground, tore my trousers, and raped me without any lubrication." Imagine that, he said in a phone interview. How do you tell your wife about that? Where do you start? And that is the question he asks. Now, I want to scroll right down to the statistics that have been shared with us in this particular report. And the Ministry of Health shared with the Star that in Nairobi County, 281 men, including boys, have reported being victims starting January to June of 2023. Some 712 men reported being victims of the crimes last year, and this is the data that has been provided by one Roslyn Kabana. She's the head of the GBV program at the Health Directorate in the ministry. And men also, so she's quoted as saying, men also suffer sexual violence, including rape, as this data clearly shows. And there is some more, just I want to find some numbers because there's a comparison they make. Here it is. And according to the Kenya Health Information System data for January to June of 2021, 10,997 females and 717 men were victims of GBV. This was higher compared to a similar period in the year 2020 when 7,291 females, 500 males were victims of GBV. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic amplified the challenge of violence during emergencies. Okay, and according to the National Council for Administrative Justice, SGBV constituted more than 35% of the cases reported between March and April 2020. Now, for a lot of people, because I was having, after this story was jarring for me because it's not a conversation we usually have. These types of stories, we don't hear them much. So when I read this, it was jarring for me. And so we're having a conversation in the newsroom. And when I used the term rape, somebody was like, no, rape is for women, But I'll start with you, Dr. Kizi. Why do you think we have a hard time reconciling the term rape with men?
Thank you, Olive. Thank you for having me here. That's an interesting question, and I've encountered that kind of perspective several times, even in social gatherings. So rape and even the act of sexual relations, where that's concerned, males are viewed as the penetrators, not penetrated. And so rape is also known as something that happens to someone where they are penetrated. So it's a bit difficult for people to understand how that works, and it even plays out in legal spaces. Like, can a man really be raped? I mean, how does it work? Especially by a woman, because it does happen. Also, males are viewed as, powerful, strong. They're supposed to be the stronger sex compared to women, and so women are viewed as the weaker ones. And this is not correct, but this is what the world sees. And so when that happens to a man, it's a bit confusing. It's like we don't understand how that happens. There's also this misconception that wherever sexual relations are concerned, men are always willing and happy to engage in it at all times. There's never a time when they want to not engage in that kind of activity. And that's wrong, because they do, just like women, there's the desire, there's consent. All these things apply to men as well. They need to be willing and awake, alert, willingly giving consent to such activities. And when this doesn't happen, then that is rape. But, so many times you'll hear men saying, oh, how can that have happened? You should be happy. What are you complaining about? And that's wrong. So because of all these misconceptions and all this stigma that surrounds issues around violence against men, that's one of the reasons the men will not talk about it. They'll not come forward with this issue, and it can be quite humiliating and shameful. Yeah.
All right. Marvin, you work at the GVRC. And there are some numbers we've looked at, the comparison between 2020 and 2021, and the numbers escalated. What do you make of those numbers? Is it a reflection of more men are reporting cases of SGBV, or is it that there has been an escalation in this type of crime?
Thank you, Olive. From where I'm coming from, working as a case manager for GVRC, I'm actually shocked, because the issue we have with men is not that the violence is not happening. It's that the reporting is too low. Among all the numbers that you have said, there's no number of cases that have reached 1,000 for men. I'm only hearing 700, 500. But these are just based on maybe the Kenya demographic health survey, which is done annually. But on the ground, when you go to the ground and you try to find out how many men have gone through SGPV cases, there are much more than what is being reported. And that is because men don't really come out. At every correspondent points, be it the police, be it the hospital, be it even to our chiefs, the society has not created that safe space for them to come out. And so for me, the numbers don't really reflect what is really going on the ground. Yeah.
Okay, and so I want us to take a break, but when we come back, I want us to hear from Dan, because Dan also works with these gentlemen through his foundation, and he himself is a victim of gender-based violence, and he will tell us a little bit about his story. You may have heard it before, but for those who haven't, you will have occasion to hear it, or at least the highlights of it. So we take a break, we come back, we continue with the conversation.